Is there anybody here that's turned a bowl? Come on, put your hand up. You turned a bowl?
Yes.
Almost everybody. How many have turned a natural edge bowl? Or should I put it the other way? Who hasn't turned a natural edge bowl? Okay, so don't listen to your neighbor. Because what I'm going to show you is how I do it. I'm sure Ron does it different. Yep. Right?
Yep.
Right? For one thing, he's still using carbides, and I'm going to use steel tools. All right, so I got to see where we are here. Yeah.
Where do you want it to be?
Where's my camera? Is that my camera right there?
Yeah, right straight front right now.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about the things I'm using so that later on you don't go, what the heck's he using? So this is a safety drive. This one happens to be made by Robust, and some people call them ring drives. The idea of this is if the wood stops, the drive's not gonna, like a spur drive's not gonna walk out of the wood, which is how the wood gets thrown at you. And Robust makes theirs so that you can put on adapters, and the only adapter that they have for their ring drive is a bowl drive. I'm sorry, I'll hold still. Where are we? So the bowl drive is just a bigger ring. So it's actually a friction drive, not like a spur drive. The spur drive is dug into the wood, and if your wood stops, the spur keeps turning, and it creates a situation where it can walk out of the wood, especially in a natural edge situation, because you got a piece of round wood on your drive, so it doesn't have a lot of contact. You using spurs, or are you? Safety, yeah. This is really the way to go. If you haven't got them, spend $55 and buy one. And throw this, huh?
7-0.
From Robust?
Yes.
Okay, well, I paid $55 for these, so that I told you I've been turning too long.
They've gone on because of food.
But you never know, it might save an eye or a set of teeth or whatever. So that's a Morris taper. This is also a Robust live center. Same thing, you can screw lots of different adapters on. I make all kinds of wooden things to go on them. I got 2 students here that just finished their fundamentals workshop. So I have to be careful what I say because they'll catch me if I lie.
So far you're not.
Nope, not yet. You'll know when I do. But one of them will voice. And since I got to drive home, I don't like chips down my shirt while I'm driving. So the gouge that I'm going to use, where do you want it? Down there? The gouge I'm going to use, these are David Ellsworth gouges that I'm using. I like them a lot. It's got a 60-degree nose bevel. I don't know. You're not holding your ears right. This is my go-to gouge. Oop, there we go. There we go. So it's got a 60-degree nose bevel, and I've never tried to measure the wing bevels. Got a long, long wing on it, and it's a very aggressive tool if you let it be. So that's the gouge I'm going to use. The other tool that I'm going to use that a lot of you won't have is a specialty tool This was a 1/2-inch scraper, and I've ground it into a tool to make dovetails for my chuck, because I strictly use dovetail chucks. I don't use any of the serrated or profiled chucks. I find with them that the tenons will break off pretty easy. And what I found with dovetails is I've never broken a tenon since I've been using dovetails. So I took a 1/2-inch scraper and ground the profile. So this will give me the flat. I'm going to get my finger in here. The long edge is to make the flat on the bottom of the workpiece, and the short edge is to make the dovetail shape. And if you go through the workshop, you'll come out of the workshop with one of these. Now, how you use it, that's going to be a different story. All you folks sitting in the front, you might need to take a shower when you go home, because this is nice and fresh and juicy. We've been turning cherry all week, so I dubbed the name on our workshop the Cherry Workshop. So what I've done with this, the pith used to be right there. And one of the things that you want to pay attention to when you're cutting your blank, this used to be one log. The pith is most of the time off center because the tree is grown on some angle, or it was grown on the side of a bank or whatever. But you'll find that part of the log is narrower to the pith than the other part. So it's a real temptation. It's like, well, I don't want it that small, but I don't want it that big. So it's a real temptation to cut down through the pith on the log to get a piece that fits what you think you want. The problem with that is the wood is, from the pith out, it's either in a compression mode or it's in a tension mode. And you want to separate the compression wood from the tension wood so that your whole piece of wood is got the same tension in it. So if I cut down this way, now I got a piece of wood that's half compression, half tension. And what you'll find is that it may crack when it starts to dry because you got different tensions pulling different directions. Some people, I'm not going to pick on Ron, but I know Ron he likes things to get kind of wobbly and whoopy. That's where the madrone comes from. That might be what he wants. So if he can dry it slow enough that it doesn't crack, he'll have an odd shape as his final thing. Tell her we're not going to be home yet.
How do you tell the compression side from the tension side?
The compression side is the narrower side. The downhill side, you'll have fatter rings on the downhill side. So if it's a limb hanging out, the wood on the downside is fatter. I'm sorry, am I in the way again? Here we go. The wood on the downside is fatter than the grain on the top side. And what the tree's doing is it's putting more wood there to counteract gravity.
That's in compression.
That'd be compression, yes.
Opposite tension.
Yes.
Okay, so now you got a tree standing straight up. Tell me the same thing, or give me the same thing.
It doesn't matter unless it's got a big limb on one side.
Well,
it'll do the same thing because it's trying to support
So if
that.
you're taking it out of the trunk,
It should be even, right, Bruce?
yeah, it'll be pretty much in the center. Last year, the gypsy moths killed off one of my white oak trees. And I had to take it down, and it was a 200-year-old tree. And the pith was dead center all the way up. Well, the veneer buyers, I got some nice money out. Not enough to take it down, but I got a nice check from them. Whereas if the pith had been off on the side like that, I wouldn't have got nearly as much money. So it does happen, but it's somewhat rare. Are you overhead? There we go. I know you can't see it. This is a little tool I use to find center around things. And these are, depending on where you buy them, I don't know what Woodcraft gets for them, but online they're about 15 bucks. Center finder, yeah, exactly. And so I use this instead of a ruler to find my center, which is where I want my drive to be. And I do that by, laying the thing on there and looking at the rings on each end until I've got the same ring coming off of each end. It's probably hard to see with this bark. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit, but I just want to get square.
So I've done that. I've kind of found center this way. Then I want to know what center is this way, and that takes a lot of interpolation. I'm just going to look down on it and see where the wood is compared to the rings. And I think I'm pretty close to center right there.
Camera doesn't look like that, but the camera's coming in at looks like it was.
And then I mark it because after last week or this week, my memory's not working too well. That's all I need. I need a punch mark. Nope. Oh. I don't know. I might get the lathe instead. And then I'm going to take a Forstner bit. This is a 2-inch Forstner bit. The size doesn't mean anything. It's just a big bit. And what I want to do is I want to get through the bark and I want to get down into some solid wood. There we go. And again, this is how I do it. I'm sure there's somebody thinking right now, it's like, oh, I wouldn't do it that way. Okay. Each to their own. I have to admit, I didn't think about the size of the lathe when I picked up this piece of wood.
It's not on my computer.
So now what I'm doing is I'm just gonna lightly contact the pins on both the drive and the live center, because I want to be able to spin that wood around and move it. And let me get things positioned here and then we'll worry about the camera. This is a little long. All right, so can you get this? I want to bring this way. This is, I think, when John Jordan did a natural edge, I think, didn't he? So you can see my hand here. You're getting there. There you go. There you go.
Bruce, can we get a little more volume, please?
I'll get,
I want to get a shorter tool rest. This one's too long for this.
More volume, please. Can't hear a thing.
he's not talking.
Did you want me to sing? No. Good. All right, so what I'm doing, it's not showing on the camera real well, but I'm using the tool rest to be able to compare in the rotation of the piece of wood where the bark is. I want the bark to come around in the same place on both ends. So what I've done is I've found the one. I can show you I didn't get in center real well. So we'll do it again. I'm on the bark. And I've got about a ½ inch here of space. So what that's going to do when I have my final turning is one end of the bowl is going to be lower than the other end of the bowl. Which means now what I want to do is I want to take and reposition my tail, live center. I'm just trying to get these so they're the same. And again, I've got about a ½ inch of difference here, so I got to use a little interpolation. And that looks pretty good. So now I got to worry about the low edge of the natural edge bowl. I'm going to come over here. I'm sorry, I'm not used to small lathes. Sorry about that. Same thing. Here's where you want to be. From the in camera. Look at this guy go. So all I'm doing is putting the tool rest in a comparison spot. I'm going to run the wood around, and I'm pretty close there. So I'm happy with that position. Thanks, Tom. You know, and because this lathe is smaller than I'm used to, it really brings out a good point that you need to make sure as you move the banjo around, if you're in this situation, this piece of wood's not going to rotate with the banjo under it. So you got to make sure that you're going to clear the workpiece. Now these safety drives require pressure to get the friction to make the drive. And you will see the piece of wood slow down or stop on me a couple times while it's getting itself settled into the wood. That's nice and solid there. I guess I'll start out with a short one. You want to have your tool rest. You want to have your tool rest, just like everything else, high enough to hold the cutting edge of your tool at center of the lathe. And then you want to make sure that everything's going to clear. So I got to come out a little further. And I debated about how much actual turning time I wanted to demonstrate, just because I know sometimes it gets a little tedious sitting there in the audience watching chips flying. But based on the hands that went up in the air, actually seeing how you deal with some of the shortcomings of the wood. Us guys that know how to do this will just have to humor yourself while we get through the wood.
We still can't hear you.
I'm screaming. Always, when you start the lathe, turn your speed all the way down, stand out of the line of fire. In other words, if it comes off the lathe, don't stand where it's going to fly. And bring your speed up. Make sure everything's clear.
Hang on, you're getting a wireless mic, sorry.
5, 4, 3. You can just put it back there. 5, 4, 3.
Hang on, I'm gonna turn it up on this. Right there.
And so you just stand there and just keep saying, hello, hello, and then the guy comes on, so he's ready to give you a spiel, and you just keep going, hello, hello,
Turn it on, so, sorry.
hello.
Now we can hear you.
Yeah, much better.
I'm sorry. Ron, when they made this platform for you, they should have made it a little wider. Well, I used to be taller than I am now. Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of. So does that work all right with the shield down? Yeah. Okay, thanks. All right, so your next challenge is how fast. And the wood in the lathe is going to kind of predict that for you, because the more off balance the wood is, the more the lathe is going to start moving around. So I'm up to around 600 and it's really nice and steady. A little bit of vibration, but not bad. So as far as I'm concerned, for knocking off corners, this is good. Anybody get some bark on them yet? I just got one. Okay, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to make horizontal cuts and I'm going to float the bevel. I don't have anything for my bevel to contact. And I'm providing the motion for the tool with my body by swaying. I don't want to use my arms to move the tool. Because when you think about it, when you're moving a tool like this with your arms, think about all the muscle adjustments that have to happen to move that and stay steady. Whereas if I got it up against my body, I can lean pretty steady. Especially tonight after a couple gin and tonics. So I moved, I'm clearing the banjo, firing the hole. So my first need right now is just to get this piece rounded out. Just like everything else we turn. I'm pushing my bevel too hard. There we go. I don't know where you're, okay. It takes a little while for the drive to settle in. I'm taking some fairly aggressive cuts so that you guys don't fall asleep while I'm doing this. So I'm moving the tool so that the bevel is actually pointing in the direction I want it to go, the tool to go. And even though all the action's down on the tool bit, or on my tool, sorry, that was a metal term, tool bit. What I'm doing is I'm looking up here because I can see my depth of cut and adjust my angle on my bevel to dictate whether I'm going in or out in depth. Make a fairly slow entry cut. I got the tool opened up right now, so I'm pointing at about 11 o'clock. Now, if you get with any of the guys that just finished the workshop this week, they'll tell you, I don't give them any round wood because they need to know how to deal with all the corners and whatnot on a piece of wood. But when I'm home alone and nobody knows it, I take this piece of wood to the bandsaw and I cut it round so that I don't have to spend as much time. I'm almost round. No, no, that part stays the same. But as you can see there, you know, the bark will be up here somewhere sometimes, depending on the arc of the log. And so that's the point that you use to compare one side to the other. And you can see I'm off a little bit. Yeah, I could. I could shift that around. I'm not going to because I don't think that's going to make a whole lot of difference in the end product. So we're almost round. You got to remember what you're doing is you're taking a piece of metal and you're sticking it into a piece of spinning wood. And the metal wants to stop the wood. So if you get it, if while you're making a cut and your tool starts jumping around on you, like it was just a minute ago there or a second ago, just stop, just hold the tool there, but stop your motion. And let the tool eat down that little hump that's making your tool jump. And then at that point, you're good to go nice and smooth again. All right. Got a flat there? Let me in on the joke. I like jokes too. That's part of the fun. All right, so now my next step is I want to flatten this off. And because I've rounded it out, I can bring my speed up. I'm up around, I'm just under 1,000 RPM now. Okay, so this entry cut is, I don't want to call it tricky, but it can be difficult. So what I'm doing is I'm closing the gouge down, completely closed. So if you went across the flute, the perpendicular coming up would be straight up and down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tool and I'm going to rub it against the wood. And I'm doing a scraping cut. So I'm rolling the tool open, and I've rolled it open so I'm pointing pretty much at 2 o'clock. Now it's an intermittent cut because the guy who cut this with his chainsaw didn't get it perfectly flat. And all I'm trying to do is flatten it out. And again, I'm giving the motion with my body. I'm not doing it with my arms. I'm leaning in. There's my scraping cut. I'm rolling the tool open. So now the gouge can work from its edge, cutting edge. I pick up my cut. Go a little farther. This is a Stronghold Chuck made by One Way Company. It has their number 3 jaws on it, which are about 3.5 inches. So there's something I don't understand about chuck manufacturers. When you look at the specifications for a chuck, they'll give you a size range. So they'll say 3.5 to 4 3/4 for your compression mode, which to me makes absolutely no sense because there's only one spot where this chuck is at maximum holding power, and that is when the jaws are in what we call perfect circle. As soon as you start going larger, you're forcing the chuck jaws to use the corners of each jaw to penetrate the wood and hold on to it. And the wood itself, there we go, the wood itself starts pulling, because of the radius, starts pulling away from the face of the jaw, chuck jaw. So this, to me, this jaw should be listed as a specific size. And I'm just picking a number, I'm saying 3.5. Because that's kind of how I think of this size jaw.
We're having trouble hearing you again.
Turn your volume up.
Mine is up and other people are saying the same thing.
It's our audio equipment or operators here that you should be hollering at. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a set of dividers I'm gonna put it down inside the chuck and adjust the dividers so the points are fitting inside that dimension. So I've got this jaw set right now visually pretty close to perfect circle. So when they make these jaw sets, I don't know about in today's world now with the modern, more modern equipment, but back in the day when they were making these, this was a piece of metal that was turned on a lathe, and the profiles and all were put into it on a lathe. And then the next step for that jaw set was it went to a saw and they sawed it apart in quarters. So to maintain your perfect circle, you have to realize that there was a saw that went through there and took some metal out. So you're always going to have a gap. If you close that all the way down solid, it's going to not be in a perfect circle. It'll be close, but it won't be. So again, and I know that there's what? 35? There it is. Thank you. They're in competition with my hearing aids for space. There's multiple ways of, Doug has shown some ways that he marks his tenon size. I don't know how you do it, Ron, but okay. But the easiest way I found to do this is to take a set of calipers, correspond it with a chuck, and then I'm going to turn the speed down a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the left leg. I'm also going to stand out of the line of fire. And I'm going to use the left leg to put a scratch in my wood. And I compare where that scratch is to the right leg. And I'm just a little small there, so I'm going to move over and make my circle just a tiny bit bigger. And then I press it in pretty good because I want a pretty good scratch. And so that's the diameter chuck on the center of the workpiece. That's all there is to it. You could use a compass with a pencil, let the pencil make the line and let the pivot point of the compass compare it. Doug, you use a kind of a ruler with some that fits, his ruler fits up over the live center, and that becomes the anchor point, and then he's got holes drilled for his pencil for the different chuck sizes he has. So now that I know where my chuck's going to want to go, I can start shaping the bowl blank. About 1,000, a little over 1,000. Well, I bet you guys can hear me now, because I can hear me. So all I'm doing is cutting uphill. It looks like I'm going downhill, but I'm cutting uphill. And I'm knocking that bottom shape off to start forming the outside of the bowl. Now it's really too bad Stuart Batty's not here because his claim to fame is he can do this in 4 cuts. But he's using his 40/40 gouge, so. David Ellsworth must be a little slower than that because Ellsworth gouge takes a little longer. All right, so I'm riding the bevel, but I'm really in what they call floating mode. So I'm not pushing the bevel against the wood very hard. I've just got enough pressure on it that it'll stay in my cut. So now I'm in an interrupted mode, you can hear it. If I was pushing hard, you'd get more of a sound. Well, what that does is that's vibrating me too. I'm trying to hurry this situation a little bit for you. That was too big a cut. I gotta stop and take part of that cut and finish it. You might have a piece of bark coming at you, Ron. How are we doing on time?
20 to 11, we got something.
Okay. I don't want to run overtime. Because I know everybody wants to know whether they won that stick of wood. Too big a cut for the drive. For those of you who can see the shoulder up here, that's my cut. And I'm pulling off about 3/8 of an inch of wood right now. Now I'm way out in the interrupted, and I'm in the softwood, and I'm in the bark. Let's see what it looks like. Okay. Yep. No. No, no. The question is, where the bark meets the wood, is there any special technique for the tool movement? And I find that there isn't, other than just, I can go fast through the wood, but when I get to that point, I slow down and let the tool do the cutting a little easier. So I'd still be taking the same shoulder cut, but the shavings themselves would be thinner. Where these are pretty hefty. That's probably 40 to 50 thousandths thick. All I did is I picked up a sharp tool. Makes a world of difference. And again, I'm just swaying. I'm just moving my body, and my focus is just to keep the tool on the workpiece and keep the bevel in the right connection. Now, I'm off balance, so I got to move myself. I got to stop the cut. I come back and pick up my cut. Left a little ridge. I didn't quite pick it up. There it is. Now I'm in the bark. So I'm about 3/4 of an inch from my tenon shape, so I want to go ahead and produce my tenon shape. And again, I'm doing an entry cut where the gouge is closed down. I'm doing a scrape, and that's to get a shoulder for my bevel to ride against. And then I roll the tool open. I'm pointing at about 2 o'clock, and I proceed. And I want my tenon just a little bit longer, so I'm going to make one more cut. Barbadil says oops is a technical term. Can you go up airborne? I don't know if you can see what, maybe zoom down. I don't know, can you? It's pretty close. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get the bottom flat where the chuck jaws have to mount. And so this is a scraping tool. So if I rock the tool up like you would with a traditional scraper, because of the length of this area, it can get pretty aggressive. And I don't want it to get aggressive. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it flat, and I'm going to slide the tool across, and I'm using the very point of the tool to cut. Same thing. The more that I get this fully engaged in the wood, the more strength I got to have to keep it under control. So what I'm going to do now, I've got a flat cut. I'm visually going to back the tool away so that I'm comparing the tool straight to the flat of the wood. Bring the corner in contact with the tenon and slide it across, letting the angle, the bevel angle that I've ground in there, direct the tool. There's my dovetail.
Did you make that dovetail tool or did you buy it?
Well, you, if you sign up for the workshop, you'll go home with one of these. No, I grind these. I've ground it myself. Now that I know where my chuck's going to be, I can finish doing some forming, shaping. About 1100 RPM. All right, see, there's that bounce I was talking about. So you just hold the tool there for a little bit, and it'll clean that up, and then you can proceed. That bounce was actually starting to come from the fact I'm going into the intermittent cut area, and I'm off balance. Time to move the tool rest. So now when I'm out here, I want to move kind of slow because I'm in the bark, and I don't want to rip the bark off. I want to cut it off. Otherwise, I'll be out in the wood pile finding a piece of cherry that I can lift a hunk of bark off and glue it into my blank. Because nobody wants to buy a natural edge bowl that's missing a chunk of bark. So I'm going to get shaped down like this. So all the time I'm going uphill with my cut. And the reason I'm doing that is because the fibers underneath are supporting the fibers that I'm cutting. If I was going downhill, I'm going downhill to get that support. If I was going uphill to the wood, there would be no support and I'd get a rough cut, which I'll show you in a sec. I'm going to do one just for fun. I'm tapering that out. I'm not going to go all the way to the end of my bark cut. There we go. So it looks like I'm going downhill, but I'm actually going to go uphill to the wood. Doug, I need to build you a bigger platform. Does it make any difference what season the wood's cut in to have the bark stay on? Yes. Winter is best, and the reason for that is there's less moisture up in the Cambrian layer, which is what the bark's adhered to. And therefore, the Cambrian layer doesn't shrink as far when it dries. I've done a lot of natural edge poles. This piece of wood was cut a month ago. And I've probably got 20 of these in drying right now. And so far the bark's staying on all of them. So I don't know how to answer that, you know. But I also have I have some white oak that was cut last summer in the heat of the summer, and all the bark's fallen off of it. This is a sharp tool too, by the way. When you know I'd get a nice smooth cut. I was hoping for a fuzzy cut. Right in here it's fuzzy. Whereas here is where I cut in the opposite direction, it's a lot smoother. So even though it looks like I'm going downhill, I'm actually going uphill to the wood. It's an aggressive cut, that's why it's jumping on me. And I want to leave that flat. So what's going to happen here, I'm going to do a twice turn bowl because I don't like floppy things. I like nice and nice and smooth, straight, no woppiness. And so what's going to happen here is I left a shoulder for the chuck to go on. And when I eventually turn this again and turn it around and do the finish cut, what I'm going to do is, let me see where I can get here. There we go, right there. So what I'll do is I'll continue to, now this is when I'm upside down. We'll talk about that a little better. I'll continue that arc and I'll go down into the tenon with that arc so that I can finish the bottom of my bowl. Right now, this is a fixture. And I want to make one more cut with a sharp tool because I want to get rid of these tool marks. And I sharpen probably more than most people do because of this platform, I got to use my arms out. The reason I do that is I just like the way the sharp tool goes through the wood. versus trying to force the tool. I mean, this thing's almost pulling itself into the wood because it's like, feed me, Seymour, feed me. I'm getting bumpy there. Because this is the first turn of a two-turn, I'm not going to get too excited about getting a nice smooth exterior. All I want is, I don't want any ridges, because the ridges will dry first, and in cherry that starts your crack. The crack will start in that ridge, and then it'll just follow. Because once your crack starts, what happens is it opens that deeper wood to air. So that little bit of wood will dry quicker, and that just extends the crack. Okay, I'm going to do a shearing cut. Does anybody not know what a shearing cut is? Good, I won't explain it then. Everybody knows. What I want to do is I'm just taking the ridges off. You can start sanding that at about 320. Bingo. All right. Questions? Mm-hmm. Say it again, George. I didn't quite hear it all. Go into the bark instead of out. I haven't had to, but can you go aerial again here? You see these areas that the bark's popped off? That's what's caused it, is I've come out instead of going in. Knockout bar. This guy up. Oh, there it goes. Oh. 5 or 6 years. I've pretty much accumulated all the chucks that I could ever dream of wanting, other than once in a while something special will come up. All right, so what I'm dealing with right there is my tenon's bottoming out in my chuck. And so I can't get a good solid fit. So I got to take that off. Anybody got a pocket knife with them? No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I got a Forstner bit. I could do that. This is another way to do it. It's a carver's mallet. We make these in the workshop. That's our first project after we learn how to turn beads and coves.
Oh, think you walk away with it and take it fundamental class?
Yep. It's also how I keep track of how many classes I've taught, because every class I turn one, and I got them lined up on my shelf. I just added number 11. All right, so a chuck is a mechanical device. It's got two holes for you to put your chuck key in. You want to use both of them because there's gear backlash that happens in there, and you want to take that backlash out. Now, normally I would take and slide the head over and stand at the end of the lathe and turn off the end of the lathe. But I'm afraid Doug might pull out his Glock 9 and use it on me if I did. So I'm going to do it the way that I have less control. But it's also, you know, you have to think about this in terms of you're out there looking for a lathe. Yeah, I want to take him off. You're out looking for a lathe, and you find a really good deal on a lathe. Maybe that lathe's not going to do what you want to do. For example, it might have a fixed head and a long set of ways on it. And so the only way you can hollow something is the way I'm going to demonstrate right now. And the problem is when you're, is this empty? Yeah, let's get him out of the way. The problem is to make the cut I want to make, I got to hold the handle out like this. So I don't have a lot of control here in terms of counteracting what the wood's doing. It's got a lot of leverage on me. Whereas if I was at the end of the lathe, again, I can have a tool right up against my body and stabilize it. And I think that's how you do it now, isn't it?
All of my hollow ones come off.
Sure. And that's the reason.
You get a better chance.
So I just went through teaching 4 people how to do this because they had lathes that they couldn't do it otherwise. So I'm a little bit versed. The first one I did in the workshop, I wasn't sure it was going to come out very good. David Ellsworth, before they came out with lathes that had the headstock move, he actually had a saddle. And he would sit on the ways to accomplish the same thing, but I can't imagine he could have swayed very much that way. That's just a little aside. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with a scraping cut. Are you guys where you want to be? I'm going to start out with a scraping cut because what I want to do is I want to get a shoulder in there that the bevel can rest against. And then I'm going to open the bevel up on the tool to about 2 o'clock. And I'm going to swing my handle and just kind of make a semi in there, semicircle. Same thing, coming back, I'm making a scrape. Open the tool. And I'm just making an arc. and I'm pivoting off my thumb. And yes, you do have to deal with the nub. Rudy Lopez makes a game out of the nub. And his game is he wants to cut that off, but he wants to catch the nub in the flute of the tool. And he can do it. I haven't been able to do it too many times in a row. There we go. By the way, this is a David Ellsworth tool. This is M2 steel. It's dull already. This is a David Ellsworth tool, and this is a powder metal technology, cryogenically hardened. And I was using it before, and it's still sharp. Oh, is it on my? Can you hear me? Okay, so what I was saying is a little extra money for the harder metal pays off. All right, same thing. Now I'm out in the bark now. Scraping cut straight in. So I've got you're not going to see it very well on the screen. I've got the bevel pointing straight in on the blank. There's my scrape. I'm rolling the tool open. I'm on the bevel all the way through the cut. Now the circumference of the wood in the center there is going a lot slower than the circumference of the wood at the outside. So you have to slow down your feed rate of your tool in order to let the tool do the cutting. And what happens, a lot of turners don't want to slow down. And so they get down here on the nub and they start pushing. Which is a bad thing to do because the nub breaks. Can you still hear me? The nub breaks, and because you're pushing on the tool jumps across your hollow and hits the wood that's going up. And so it hooks into the wood and it raises and comes around and slams down on your hand or your finger or whatever. And there's people that have actually amputated their finger being underneath of that tool when it slams down. So you don't want to push to get that nub off. You want to let the tool just eat it away, take your time. You know, you don't want to be in a hurry. After all, it's the journey, not the destination. How am I doing so far? All right, Ron? I haven't missed anything, have I? Aggressive cut. Some guys will let that nub kind of get long in length and break it off. Just take their tool in there with a lead nut running and snap it off. Never done that. But what I want to do is start getting some support in here because I could feel the tool handle wanting to rise on me from the wood levering it. So you always want to spin the workpiece at least once, make sure everything clears. I'm taking very aggressive cuts. And that's because I saw Ron's eyes kind of blinking a little bit, and it's like, okay, I better hurry up before he falls asleep. So my hand position's changed a lot because now I got a tool rest in my way. You know, where before I could be like this and go around. Well, I don't want to be near this wood because it'll tear you up. And I don't want to be in a position where if my tool was to snap across there and come back and slam down, that my hand would be underneath of it. So I've gone into an overhand mode, which I don't normally use other than doing natural edge bowls. And what that does is that keeps my hand on my side of the tool rest. So the two guys that are here from that just went through the workshop can tell you I hold on to a tool pretty lightly. Yes and no. Oh, I'm sorry. Question was, do I ever retighten my chuck on wet wood? And that's because wood will compress. Let's try it. Let's see if it's compressed. If I can find the key. Oh, here's one. Let's see if I can get any more. Nope, not there. Got about a 1/4 inch of movement. So we're still pretty tight. Scraping cut. Once I get a shoulder in there in the wood, not in the bark, in the wood. Once I get a shoulder in there that the bevel can ride against, then I open the tool up. So I go out of scraping mode into cutting mode. You guys might be looking at the tool. I'm looking across the other side of the blank at what the tool's producing. Because with all the chips and the tool and my hand and all that, I can't really see what the tool's cutting at the point that it's cutting it, but I can see the result on the other side of the bowl. So I'm doing a twice turn bowl, so I'm gonna leave this guy a little thick because I want to take him home and dry him and hopefully sell him this fall. The rule of thumb is to leave it 10, how much wood do I leave on this turning for the drying? And the rule of thumb is 10% of the diameter. And that seems to work out pretty well. I've had some bowls that warped enough that I couldn't get round again. But in general, that's plenty of wood. So one of the things I want to point out, this one, hot under that, is I'm a lot thinner visually here than I am down here. I don't know if you can see it on the screen or not. So how do you adjust for that? You got to decide, it's like, okay, this is lots thicker than this is up here. Oh, can you see it now? So what that means is when I start my cut, I don't want to start my cut out here because I've already cut it more than I have at a lower point. So what I want to do is I want to decide where I want to start my cut, and about at that depth is where I'd want to start this cut to get this evened out. So what I do is I'll sort of visually find that spot, and then I'll start to lathe up. I'm in a bevel supported cut. I got to get a better grip on this tool. So I'm going to leave my bottom wood right now. I get it thinned up a little bit. I got to do it again. Right about there. So by doing this, what I'm doing is I'm ignoring the higher parts of the bowl blank. You know, why have I got to do all this? It's because I was making some sloppy cuts and I wasn't paying attention to my thickness all the way down. So now I've got to compensate for it. And I'm just about there. I'm a little thinner here than I am here. So hopefully one more cut. And I'm going to start right about there. When I'm in my shop, I have a powered respirator on, so when the hood's down, I still get this nice flow of air going across my face. It gets hot under these. That's pretty close. So this is a rough turn. I'm going to leave it that thick. The only other thing I want to worry about now is how much wood have I got in the bottom? And I don't have any fancy jigs for figuring that out, so I'm just going to look across the rim of the bowl, place my thumb. So I got a lot of wood in the bottom that I want to take out. Make bevel contact, move my handle to start the cut, and just start hollowing it down. Same thing, bevel contact, I got to move the handle so it'll start the cut. I want to move my tool rest in a little further. I do have a bottoming gouge with me that I'll use once I want to clean that bottom up. But to just hog the wood out, I don't use it. To me, the bottoming gouge is a finishing tool, a finesse tool. When you're turning these, especially when you're down inside the bowl, you want to keep in mind that you got some rough wood rolling around just dying to get at your skin. Nothing would make that bull happier right now than to rake me up. So you want to consciously think about where your hand is in relationship to the workpiece. I mean, you do all the time, but especially with these, because if it gets you, you'll really know it. You want to keep your first aid kit handy. I am, yes. I'm trying to keep the bottom thickness the same as the wall. No, it does not. So I've got about an inch of wood to the bottom of the bowl, and I got a little under 3/4. So I just got a little bit more to go. I don't know if you saw that or not, but I decided to pull my hand back a little bit. So I didn't bring any scrapers with me today, mainly because when I packed last night, all I was thinking about was dinner and going to bed. You got a ridge in there I want to take out. Right there.
Did you ever shear scrape on the inside?
Never. Question was, do you ever shear scrape on the inside? And the answer you heard, never. That's a good way to have a horrific catch and blow your workpiece apart. Now, I have used negative rake scrapers in there, and that works well. All right. So we're ready to take him off the lathe, and I'm just going to show you how I set it up to finish the bottom. I'm not going to finish the bottom because I want the tenon and all to stay on it. I'm not like Doug. He's got so much wood he doesn't know what to do with. I don't have a lot of wood, so. So I got to. I was just checking to see if anybody was awake. That comes from being on Zoom for the last 2.5 years. Like, anybody awake out there? I think they're asleep. Ruby's asleep.
Yeah, we just got the mics all muted to talk back.
I'm still awake in here.
Good girl.
So am I.
Yes, I do use CA glue on the bark at times to hold it on. My brain right now in this demo is to not take any more time than necessary. So this bowl actually may become a natural edge bowl without bark, which I like. And I have some customers that like them. All right, so there's lots of ways to reverse chuck them. don't know if I'm in or not. I'm in, okay. Doug does a wonderful demo on reverse chucking.
I think we'll be doing that here in September.
Okay. So this is, and I don't have the right chuck for this. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I picked up the wrong chuck for this. So now I'm out there doing what I told you don't want to do. But since I'm not going to really turn the work, we'll just leave it at that. There you are. So this is a jam chuck. Hope it's going to fit in there. It's not. Okay. All right. So because I'm not in the right chuck, I really don't want to spin this guy. But what I would do is I would oh. This is all sacrificial wood. This, what is this? This is a glue up. A lot of times, what I found works really great is you can find pieces of old cedar telephone poles, and they make fabulous wood for lots of things, but also for jam chucks. So what I would do if I was going to spin that, and I don't want to, is I would take my gouge and I would shape that so it would fit inside of my bowl. And one of the things, I've had some bowls where I finish in the bottom and they're already finished on the inside. And so you want a really accurate fit. Now, I do realize you can have a rubber chucky thing and put that inside to drive your bowl blank, and those don't mark up the wood so much. But if you're cheap like I am and don't have those, then what I do is I shape a piece of wood to fit inside my bowl. So this is a contour gauge. They come in different sizes. And so now I've got something that I can shape my blank to. Where are you? There you are. I can shape my blank to so it'll fit right inside of the bowl perfectly. And it'll have lots of traction to drive your bowl. But then this would go up here. And then I would put the dimple, which I believe it or not, I still have, even though we took off some wood, on my tailstock. And that'll spin the work. Accurately. It's not right now because my jam chuck is not fitting the blank so well. And then I can make my cuts and finish the bottom. And there's nothing magical about it. It's just how to mount the piece. You know, like I said, if you have a rubber chucky thing, they come in different sizes, and that soft rubber adheres to the wood, drives the wood nice, and you have enough drive to make your cuts. Other than keep in mind, you always want to use lighter cuts when you're in this. You don't want to try to be pulling off 3/8 of an inch wood ribbon. You know, you want to take almost little tiny stuff, not that guy, but little tiny stuff. because you don't have as much drive as you do when you're in the chuck. So that's it. I'm sweating. I don't know about you guys.
Yep. Question is, what do you do to dry the wood? I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
You repeated it. Are they going to hear me on the?
No, tell me and I'll tell them.
Oh,
So I don't have to keep
no,
swapping
just
this.
give me the mic.
Okay. Just hold it in front of you.
We don't want to get that silly. Knowing the wood is the first step. Who asked that? Okay. Knowing the wood is the first step. Some woods will split quicker than other woods, so you need to know the species and what it does. If you don't know, then you want to err to the side of safe, and safe is as slow as possible. So cherry, I actually use a product, not Anchor Seal, but you could use Anchor Seal. Craft Supply sells a product that supposedly Mike Mahoney developed, and it's called Tree Saver. And all it is PVC glue. So I'll put a coat of glue on it, and then I put it in I use boxes. You can use paper bag, brown craft bag. And I'll figure on this one right here, it'll take it about 6 months to dry. If you don't want to, if you got a wood, black walnut's great. It doesn't split. I'll just take the black walnut blank and I'll stick it in a bag or I'll stick it in a box. And then I weigh it before it goes in the box, and then I weigh it and I write that on the bottom of the blank. And then I stick it in the box and I weigh the box with a bowl in it, so that way I don't have to keep taking the bowl out to weigh it. And I'll put it on a shelf and I'll forget about it for 3-4 months. And after about 4 months, I'll start taking it down and I'll put it on the scale and I'll write the weight. And I keep doing that until the weight stops dropping. I've actually had some where the weight started going back up because they were dry early spring, and in the summertime they're starting to take humidity on and gaining weight again. But once the weight stops dropping, then the moisture content in the wood is acclimated to the environment. So in theory, it's dry. Same as air drying planks. So how long do you wait? Well, this is like 1 inch thick. It's actually a little less than that. Rule of thumb is if you're air drying planks off a sawmill, 1 year per inch to go from fresh wood to dry. These I find will dry in 6 to 8 months with the glue on them in the box. But you want to go as slow as you can, knowing what the wood is. Now, cherry is the only one that scares me because it'll just crack. It'll just make up its mind it wants to crack, and I don't care what you did. And if you do that process, if you've done that process, I know you've had times when you've opened the bag, it's dry, the weight's dry, you open the bag and it's got a big split in it. It's kind of, I don't. Some of the guys, if I'm transporting them, like this one today, I'm going to pick up some of these and put it in the bag to keep the moisture under control till I get it down to the shop. But in general, no, I don't have any chips in them when I put them on the shelf. Yeah, any more? I don't.
Repeat the question, please.
Not in bowls. What I've found is, I'm sorry. The question is, do I ever turn it to finished thickness and let it dry at that point? Right? Is that the right? Okay. And what I find is my customers don't like bowls that are wobbly and kittywampus and that kind of thing. For some reason, my customers like bowls that are round. And so I twice turn all my bowls. Now, if I was doing a hollow form, like I'll do a globe, it's a hollow form. I've never brought any in here, but I could. Those, I turn to final thickness. And then what I do with those is I'll take stretch wrap. You go to Menards, you can buy a roll of stretch wrap for packing your boxes and all that kind of thing. And I'll put a layer of stretch wrap around the outside of it so the moisture can't come from on the outside. All the moisture has to come from the inside up through my opening that I did the hollow form on. Now I'm talking about a hollow form with a hole like that. And what that does is that slows down the drying so that I don't get tension spots, which is what's going to make a crack. So you're doing a hollow form, a lot of times you got the pith in the hollow form, where you got piths from branches and that kind of thing, which are nice features. But there are also points where if the piece dries fast, that's where your cracks are going to start. So I wrap them up so they can't sweat, and they got to do everything from inside. And Ron's shaking his head, so I'm thinking he's. Oh, you do? Wow.
And if you watch a piece start to crack, it always starts on the outside.
Oh, yeah.
So now what Gouges is doing with stretch wrap, he's forcing it dry from the inside out.
Yeah.
And it will maintain its shape better. It may not be perfect, but it's not going to crack.
Yeah. And that's a technique I learned from David Ellsworth. He's got, I think David's only got one book out. And it's a book that's well worth buying and actually reading it. He writes it in a book form, so it's even interesting to read. And what he does with his hollow forms is he puts a coat of finish on the outside. And then he sticks a coat hanger down in it and he hangs it up, lets it dry for a few days. Without stretch wrap. He uses finish, polyurethane oil type blend on the outside, and all he's doing is just slowing down the evaporation rate from the outside. So he's forcing the moisture to go in there. I don't always like to put a finish material on there because a lot of times I don't know what I want to put on it for a finish. I might want to keep the color of the wood. So if I put an oil on it, it's already darkened it. And so I found that using the stretch wrap on it, the wood will hold its color. You know, it'll darken on the outside, but once I go and sand that, it'll brighten the wood up again. And then I might put a lacquer on it. An excellent finish is the one that Tom demonstrated, where you use the Beal system and you buff it. Makes a marvelous finish, and it doesn't darken the color of the wood at all.
Could you give a quick recap of what Ron said he does to dry his hollow forms? We couldn't hear that online.
What does Ron do? Ron wraps it with shrink wrap and then puts the paper towels in it.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff it with paper towels and then wrap it with shrink wrap.
And occasionally take the towels out, let them dry, put dry ones back in.
Yeah.
You can do that with a hollow form rather quickly.
Right, okay.
Get all that?
Yep, we got it. Thanks.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, sir. About what? What was I fussing about? Because you want an equal thickness in the wood. If I have wood that's thicker in one area than another area, the thinner area is going to dry faster than the thick area. So it wants to shrink faster than the thick area does. And it'll create a tension and it'll crack the wood.
Just a little lip like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much. You know, 1/8 of an inch, I can guarantee she's going to crack. I love cherry. I like the smell of it. Anything else? Yeah, Tom. So Tom says he turns his completely through, inside and outside, in one turning. He doesn't he partially turn it and come back the next day to finish it. And that's because it's going to lose moisture. I haven't experienced the cracks, but I've experienced it being egg-shaped. And then you got to re-round it and that type of thing.
Can't even go to one.
Yeah. If I go in the house, I'll put a plastic bag over it. And David, when he's turning his hollow forms, now he gets them really down thin. And a lot of them are pretty good size. He has a water bottle with a mister, and he keeps misting the wood on the outside while he's working on the inside bottom. So we gotta close this up because we gotta get on. These guys want to know what wood they won.
Yeah. All right, let's give a big hand to Bruce. Okay, that concludes our meeting, but we will do raffle.